This is the story of Sarah Jenkins, a guard at the notorious Blackgate Penitentiary, and the man who should have been her enemy, Inmate 479, Elias Vance. Elias was serving a life sentence for a brutal crime, yet his eyes held a quiet intelligence, a depth that captivated Sarah. She was mocked by her colleagues for her kindness, for seeing the man beneath the orange jumpsuit. They said she was naive, that she was playing a dangerous game. But Sarah saw a soul worth saving, a man who wrote poetry in the dead of night and spoke of a life he never lived. Their connection was a secret, a dangerous whisper in the cold concrete halls. It was a forbidden romance that defied the walls of the prison itself. But every great love story has a secret, and Elias Vance was hiding one that was darker, more terrifying than the crime that put him behind bars. Sarah was about to risk her career, her freedom, and her life for a man she thought she knew. But what if the crime he was convicted of was just a distraction? What if the real secret was something the FBI had been searching for decades? This is the moment Sarah's world shatters, the moment she discovers the truth about Inmate 479, and the real reason he was so desperate to stay inside the prison walls. Blackgate Penitentiary was a world of routine, concrete, and cold steel. For Sarah Jenkins, the routine was a shield. She was a good guard, respected but guarded. Her life outside the walls was quiet, almost non-existent. Her passion was history, specifically the history of American prisons, a cruel irony given her profession. She often found herself lost in the archives, reading about famous escapes and legendary inmates. It was this quiet curiosity that first drew her to Elias Vance. Elias Vance was different. Convicted of a high-profile murder, the brutal killing of a wealthy art dealer, he never showed remorse, only a strange, unsettling calm. He was an enigma. While other inmates fought, gambled, or plotted, Elias read. He read philosophy, history, and poetry. Sarah, against all protocol, started leaving him books, small subtle acts of rebellion against the system she served. This was their silent language, a connection forged over shared pages and whispered literary critiques during her late-night rounds. One night, as Sarah and Elias were talking through the bars, Elias said to her that the walls of the prison were not made of concrete, but of the stories they tell themselves. Sarah asked him what story he was telling himself. Elias replied that his was a tragedy, but hers, guard Jenkins, was a mystery waiting to be solved. Their relationship deepened, crossing the line from professional to dangerously personal. Sarah began to believe in his innocence, a belief fueled by his intelligence and his apparent lack of malice. She started spending her off hours reviewing his case files, searching for the flaw, the overlooked detail that would prove the system had failed him. Her colleagues noticed. Warden Thompson, a man whose heart was as cold as the prison bars, warned her. The warden told Sarah that she was getting too close to Vance, reminding her that he was a killer, and that all inmates were masters of manipulation. He told her she needed to maintain distance. Sarah defended herself, saying she was just ensuring his compliance, and that he was a model inmate. The warden insisted that model inmates were the most dangerous, that they lull you into a false sense of security, and warned her again. But Sarah couldn't stop. She was convinced Elias was a victim of circumstance, a scapegoat. She was about to risk everything to prove it. One night, while reviewing a stack of Elias's personal effects, items the police had dismissed as irrelevant, she found it. Not a confession, not a map, but a single cryptic photograph tucked inside a worn copy of the Count of Monte Cristo. It was a picture of a small nondescript lighthouse on the coast of Maine. No one had ever mentioned a lighthouse in the murder case. It was a detail that didn't fit the story. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold prison air. This was the moment her mystery began. The photograph of the lighthouse became Sarah's obsession. It was a silent challenge, a piece of a puzzle that only Elias seemed to hold the key to. She knew she couldn't ask him directly. The prison walls had ears, and any deviation from the routine could expose their forbidden connection. Instead, she began to weave the lighthouse into their literary discussions. She started leaving him books about coastal towns, maritime history, and even a fictional mystery set in Maine. Elias, ever the intellectual, caught the subtle shift immediately. One evening, during her late-night check, Elias spoke to her, his voice barely a whisper. He said that the sea is a harsh mistress, guard Jenkins, and that sometimes the light that guides you home is the same one that blinds you to the rocks. Sarah, playing along, replied that one must always trust the light, no matter how harsh the glare. Elias then said that the light is only as honest as the man who tends it. This was their code. Sarah knew he understood. She needed to know what the lighthouse meant, and more importantly, why a man convicted of a murder in New York City had a connection to a remote spot in Maine. She took a risk. She smuggled a small disposable camera into the prison, a violation that could cost her everything. During a routine cell search, she slipped the photograph back into his book, but this time she included a tiny handwritten note asking him to mark the location on a map she would provide later. The next day, she left him a book of American geography. When she retrieved it 2 days later, the photograph was gone and a small, almost imperceptible X was marked on the map, not on the coast of Maine, but on a tiny, forgotten island off the coast of Massachusetts, an island that housed a decommissioned federal prison. The name of the island was Isle of the Damned. Sarah was stunned. The murder Elias was convicted of was tied to a stolen piece of art, a rare painting that had vanished without a trace. The police believed the art dealer was killed because he refused to give up the location of the painting. But what if the painting wasn't hidden in a vault but in a prison? Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. This was no longer about proving his innocence. It was about uncovering a massive, decades-old secret. She took her findings to her superior, Warden Thompson. She laid out the evidence, the lighthouse photo, the cryptic map, and the connection to the missing painting. The warden listened, his face impassive. When she finished, he simply laughed. He told her that she had been manipulated, that Elias Vance was playing her like a fiddle, and that she was letting her personal feelings cloud her professional judgment. He warned her that if she pursued this fantasy, he would have her badge. He then ordered her to destroy the map and the photo, and to cease all unauthorized contact with Inmate 479. Sarah knew then that the corruption might run deeper than she thought. She left the warden's office, the map safely hidden in her uniform pocket, realizing she was now on her own. Sarah knew she couldn't trust the warden. His immediate dismissal of the evidence, coupled with his threat, confirmed her suspicion. The secret was bigger than just Elias Vance. It was institutional. She decided to take a leave of absence, citing personal family matters. The warden granted it with a cold smile, clearly relieved to be rid of her. Within 48 hours, Sarah was on a ferry heading toward the Isle of the Damned. The island was desolate. The old federal prison, a crumbling monument to forgotten justice. The lighthouse, visible from the ferry, was exactly as it appeared in the photograph, a silent sentinel guarding a dark secret. She spent the first day exploring the abandoned prison. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of the wind whistling through broken windows. She followed the coordinates marked on the map, which led her not to the main cell block, but to the old warden's office, now a ruin. Inside, behind a heavy, rusted safe, she found a loose brick. Behind the brick was a small, leather-bound journal. It was the journal of the former warden of the Isle of the Damned, dating back 30 years. The journal revealed a shocking truth. The art dealer Elias was convicted of killing was not the victim, but a former inmate of the Isle of the Damned. He had been part of a secret, government-sanctioned program to hide valuable assets, including the missing painting, in the prison before it was decommissioned. The art dealer was killed, not because he refused to give up the location, but because he was trying to retrieve it. The killer was never Elias Vance. The killer was a high-ranking official who wanted the painting for himself, but the journal also contained a chilling entry. The former warden wrote that the painting was not hidden in the safe, but was used as a key to unlock a far greater secret, a massive cache of stolen gold hidden in the lighthouse itself. The art dealer had been killed just before he could use the painting to access the gold. Sarah realized the horrifying truth. Elias Vance wasn't trying to prove his innocence. He was trying to protect the location of the gold. He knew that if he was released, the real killer would follow him, and the gold would be lost forever. By staying in Blackgate, he was keeping the secret safe. Suddenly, the silence of the prison was broken by the sound of a helicopter. Sarah looked out the broken window and saw a sleek black helicopter landing in the prison yard. 3 men in dark suits emerged, led by a familiar, menacing figure, Warden Thompson. He had followed her. He knew the secret. and he was the high-ranking official mentioned in the journal. He was the real killer. Sarah was trapped. She had the journal, the map, and the truth, but she was cornered by the man who had the power to make her disappear forever. Sarah knew she had only seconds. She didn't run. She moved with the calculated precision of a guard who knew the value of a distraction. She grabbed a rusty fire extinguisher and smashed the glass of the old warden's office window, triggering a silent alarm that had been dormant for decades. The noise was deafening in the silence of the island. Warden Thompson and his men rushed toward the office. Thompson yelled that she was a fool, that she should have listened to him, and that now she would share the same fate as the art dealer. Sarah didn't reply. She scrambled out the window and ran toward the lighthouse, the journal clutched in her hand. The chase was short. Thompson's men cornered her at the base of the lighthouse. Thompson, breathing heavily, stood over her. He told her to give him the journal, and maybe he would let her live. Sarah looked him in the eye and said that Elias was right, that the walls of the prison are made of the stories they tell themselves, and that his story ends here. Just as Thompson reached for her, a small, sleek speedboat appeared on the horizon. Heading straight for the island, Thompson cursed, realizing the alarm had worked. Sarah had one last card to play. She pulled out her phone, which she had kept on silent, and showed Thompson the screen. She had managed to send a single, cryptic text message to the only person she knew would understand, Elias Vance. The message contained the coordinates of the island and the single word, lighthouse. The speedboat docked, and out stepped two figures, a stern-looking FBI agent and, surprisingly, Elias Vance. Elias was not a prisoner. He was an undercover FBI agent who had been placed in Blackgate to find the missing gold and expose the corruption that ran all the way up to the warden. The murder conviction was a cover story, a way to keep him safe inside the system while he waited for the right moment. Thompson was arrested on the spot. The gold was recovered from the lighthouse. The mystery was solved. Narrator: Sarah's world was transformed. She was hailed as a hero not just for exposing the corruption, but for seeing the truth behind the lies. She resigned from Blackgate, her passion for prison history now fueled by personal experience. She wrote a book about the case, detailing the corruption and the secret history of the Isle of the Damned. The final scene is set 1 year later. Sarah is giving a lecture at a university, a renowned expert on the history of federal prisons. After the lecture, a man approaches her. It is Elias Vance, now a free man, having completed his mission. He tells her that her story is no longer a mystery, but a legend. Sarah smiles and says that every legend needs a sequel. Narrator: the story of the gold was over, but the story of Sarah and Elias was just beginning. They walked away together, leaving the cold walls of the prison behind. But the real question remains: what other secrets are still hidden within the walls of America's most notorious prisons? Find out in our next video, where we explore the shocking truth behind the great escape of Alcatraz.